Greetings, YouTube. I am your host, Daniel Klingensmith, and today I will be reading to you The Jaguar, an original sci-fi novel written by myself and co-author Sarah Wagner. Details in the description. So, without further ado, The Jaguar. Chapter 1. The House Fills. Amy's heart fluttered as the velvet curtains rose for the first time that day. She'd done this 1,000 times before, but somehow it never got any easier. She knew she'd be fine once she got going, but those first steps out onto the stage in front of the gleaming lights and hordes of patrons, hot blood thundered through her veins. 2 hours later it was over. As they always did, the crowds roared their approval. Trumpets, whistles, applause, even a few squawks nearly drowned out in the torrent. The noises rumbled up, mirroring her emotions, then crashed down over her, a waterfall of rushing adoration. The sounds of adulation swept her backstage and back into her dressing room, her cheeks flushed with the pride of a craftsman praised for their artistry. Exhaustion, ever the partner of excitement and terror, caught up with her as she slipped out of the costume. No longer was she the giddy, elegant creature that had graced the stage mere moments before, enchanting the audience with wit, charm, and a voice that could make angels weep. Now she was just Amy. Unremarkable, she mused, at least compared to the characters she portrayed. An unremarkable girl with an unremarkable life. No adventure, no danger, no romance, and all the better for it. Lost in the post-production bustle, Amy slipped out to catch the bus back to her apartment. The ancient lights flickered to life with a distinct hum, glowing dully from their vantage points on the ceiling, eyeless gazes staring across the tiny wallpapered room, waiting for something interesting to happen. Nothing did. Nothing ever did. It was just the same old Amy, nestled in the same old faded leather couch, clutching the same old outdated tablet that had met their gaze for 10 years. Her public would have been shocked to see her humble abode. There was a certain glamorous lifestyle expected of actresses, which she felt no compunction to fulfill. Most of her peers had long since acquired massive mansions riddled with the latest technologies and ripe for the throwing of wild parties and highbrow events. The place was special for Amy, though, with its age-worn wooden doors and battered plaster walls. Age whispered to her the secrets of stories of centuries past. It was her love of the antique which had first led her to the stage, not the draw of fame and fortune. It was an art almost as old as civilization itself, steeped in the rich flavors of history, and moved her in ways that she would never have admitted to. Her pale viridian eyes roved across the screen in her lap, idly soaking in news which seemed as distant as the sun to her tiny world. A long scratch across the slick surface of the display distracted her long enough that she wondered for one fleeting moment if she might replace it. She dismissed the thought as soon as it occurred to her, though. Older than she was, it felt almost like a child to her, and there weren't many like it to be found these days. A slim, ivory-pale hand absently pushed back some strawberry blonde curls as she turned her attention back to the tablet's contents. One of her few indulgences had been the requisition of a custom converter, to allow her obsolete little piece of sentiment to keep up with the ever-advancing technologies of the web, at albeit rather slow rates. At present, news reports from across the galaxy sprawled across the screen. Wars among the more primitive alien societies, nothing new there. Life would be life, and life always meant war somewhere. Political scandal in the Ingari Collective, something about leaked sensitive data, also not too surprising. The Ingari were renowned for having extremely complicated and rigid moral codes, which often conflicted and continually baffled other species. Scrolling down the screen, an article caught her eye, almost a footnote amidst the glaring panels of interstellar conflict and intrigue. Jaguar strikes again. Really? Papers love their melodrama a bit too much. She found herself scanning this piece despite the corniness of the title. There was a certain romantic heroism to the idea of the man. A daring thief, last of a dying breed, in a world where criminals were caught within hours of the act. Evidently, the most wanted burglar in the galaxy had evaded capture yet again, this time absconding with an entire Earth battle cruiser. The article went on to detail a lengthy string of audacious and improbable crimes currently attributed to the Jaguar, but her eye was held by the brief video that accompanied the text. It was the only confirmed sighting of the Jaguar since his escape from prison. A brief glance at a camera on a busy street. The sharp features of a bald head gleamed in the light, dark-skinned, smooth and hairless, mottled with the tattooed spots and stripes that gave him his name. There was a sinister quality to his slight smile, and the way the shadows pooled under his eyes that made her squirm uncomfortably. But it was his eyes that kept her attention. They gleamed with a fiery intensity that made her hair want to stand on end. Amy frowned, shivering. If the apartment building was anything, it was definitely not secure. Nothing much had been changed about the building in the past 300 years, security systems included. It was part of what had drawn her here. Not that this Jaguar would want anything to do with her, but suddenly her wooden doors and bolt locks seemed a feeble barrier against the outside world. Pierre-François was bored. Not just a little bored, either. He was bored. 6 years of advanced education, 6 years of training, 12 years tracking dangerous fugitives across the galaxy, and they put me on a security detail. An irritated sigh escaped his lips as he glanced over a wide screen on the wall in front of him, checkered with security cameras. In theory, the computer was supposed to automatically alert him to any suspicious activity, but years of experience had taught him that computers, for all their complexity, were quite fallible. He leaned back luxuriously in his chair. At least they'd gotten that right. Broad seat, well-stuffed leather, adjustable fittings. It would have been quite easy to just drift away, let the sweet sleep hovering at the corner of his mind wrap him up until this monotonous affair was done with. A loud snore interrupted his musings. This time he didn't try to hold back his sigh as he glanced to his right at his purported partner, who had not quite managed the art of resisting temptation. I know rookies have to start somewhere, but really... It was bad enough being stuck on security detail with his record, but they stuck with a new recruit too wet behind the ears to handle a dull stakeout? And snoring to boot? It was adding insult to amputation. It didn't help that the younger man's tall, trim physique and gleaming shoulder-length black hair made him uncomfortably conscious of his own pudgy, short stature and receding gray hairline. The tip-off I got had better pan out. If I came all the way to Earth and Jaguar does not show. He glanced at the display again, noting the time. His informant had said Jaguar would be arriving almost an hour before the second performance of the day. It was already 50 minutes till. Cocky if he really does plan to show. I wouldn't want to try tackling our security without days of preparation. Of course, the Jaguar had a reputation for doing just that. Going in, taking the prize, and getting out with none the wiser. Quite a feat considering the technology available these days. Well, for all that, it is good to be back in Paris. A movement on the screen caught his eye. One of the street cameras had flickered to blank. Any other day, any other job, he might have thought it was just a bird nestling onto the lens, or a stray bag thrown by the wind, or even a malfunction. But today? Now? So, you decide to come after all. Edouard! No response. He kicked his partner's chair, jolting the younger man into a bleary state of bewilderment, but Francois paid him no heed. His attention remained fixed on the blank screen. Get your coat, Edouard. We have a friend to meet, and he mustn't be kept waiting. The streets of old Paris were always busy, but on a production night they made a barrel of salted fish look sparse. The Jaguar liked busy streets, walking among the common men unseen, unheard, the ignorant souls around him never knowing that the shadow flitting through their midst was the most wanted man from here to the rim. He wore them like a mask, an unwitting disguise crafted from the lives of the oblivious. It amused him. It wasn't their fault they couldn't recognize him, he supposed. The picture they always showed of him was almost a foot taller, and the lack of his signature tattoos certainly didn't help. Doesn't matter if they're still there if no one can see it. It had all started when he had taken that job with the Ngari to rob the embassy. Ngari, though their short, bulbous, three-legged figures and clammy hides repulsed the average human, made excellent thieves. They could mask their body heat, they made no sound as they moved, and their skin changed to match their background so well that they seemed invisible when they held still. They were also reported to be extremely loyal, but evidently no one had told that to this one. Bugger was probably following one of their damned honor codes. Hell if I know how those work. The intel was good. The plan had worked like a charm. He was well on his way to becoming an extremely wealthy man with a backstabbing little alien slimeball had snagged the loot, tripped an alarm, and shoved him through a quickly sealing blast door to eat the consequences. Prison changed a lot about a man, but these days it was what happened after you left that changed you more. He'd made quite a few contacts in lockup, and all of them more than willing to make a few modifications. At this point, whether or not he could still be considered human was more a debate for philosophers than criminals like himself. His insides, his bones, his muscles and ligaments had each been replaced, one by one, with a wild array of high-end electronic gadgetry that would make a spy faint with jealousy. He hadn't changed his outer appearance. That was his trademark, his badge of honor. But he did the next best thing. Nestled at the heart of his metal framework lay a portable holographic generator. He was not one man, but many, his appearance limited only by his foresight and creativity. He wasn't really a ghost in the crowd. He was the crowd, each and every one of them. None of this would fool a good security system, though. One quick scan would reveal him for the imposter he was. So, when he reached the security cordon, he closed his eyes, breathing deeply as the flood of information poured in from 100 sensors. He filtered it down, stream by stream, until he found his goal. "Thank you, my special friends. Your gift will not go unused." He tapped into a small packet of data hidden deep in his drives, and accessed the special program that his employers had provided him. A hiss of pleasure whistled through his teeth as he felt the program activated, felt his reach stretching, leaping out from his body, reaching out with electronic feelers that were every bit as real to him now as his arms or legs. He gently stroked closed the eye of the camera. The security forces couldn't help but notice, of course, especially after he'd tipped them off that he was coming. What good is a magic trick without an audience? He thought with a grin that would have sent people running if they could have seen it, and vanished into the crowd. Too many people. Far, far too many people. Francois didn't like people. He never had. That's part of why he did so well in a job that involved hunting them down and capturing them. But it also meant that plowing through a sweaty crowd of festive humans and aliens was his idea of the first circle of hell. He and Edouard had been following the trail of blacked-out cameras for almost 20 minutes with no sight of their quarry. The man had undoubtedly altered his appearance, of course, but both Francois and Edouard were wearing standard-issue surveillance glasses, fully equipped with a suite of sensors capable of detecting any holographic or physical modifications he might have had. Dozens of other security men, strewn throughout the milling throng, chimed regularly into his earpiece with similar lack of success. Perhaps even more confusingly, the trail they had been following didn't appear to be going, well, anywhere. In fact, they'd just about come into a complete circle at this point. Francois sighed deeply. It was becoming something of habit, all this sighing, but he couldn't help it. He'd been on the Jaguar case for years now, and it was starting to get to him. I grabbed his partner by the elbow and dragged him roughly to the edge of the crowd. It wasn't exactly quieter here, but at least he didn't have to worry about being carried off by the tide of people. He tapped the side of his glasses, opening a communication channel to the theater's security force. "Gerard, this is Francois. I am not having any luck out here. I think he may be playing games with us again. Is everything all right on your end? Everyone accounted for?" He strained his ears to hear the string of acknowledgments coming through the connection, until he heard Gerard roughly reply, "Everyone here is accounted for." A brief moment of calm silence ensued. "Have you considered the possibility it was all a prank? Perhaps he is not coming at all?" Francois rubbed his brow furiously, trying to relieve the pressure that was building up behind his eyes. "And how many pranksters do you know of that could hack through the latest and greatest security systems the government can provide, leaving no trace or signature?" "Yes, I have considered that possibility," he replied tightly. "Unless you have something useful to add." Francois out. "Well, there is one thing." Francois tried desperately not to sigh, and failed. "As long as you're out there, would you mind giving Amy an escort back through the crowd? She only has 30 minutes now, and—" "Escort back?" Francois burst out, drawing some askance glances from the passing crowd. "What do you mean, back? You told me everyone was accounted for. Back from where?" Gerard seemed torn between indignation and embarrassment. "I said everyone here was accounted for. Miss Amy went back to her room, as she always does between shows. Rue Impair." Francois swore under his breath. "All the way across town. And you only thought to tell me this now? What were you... No, never mind. Send a backup unit to her apartment immediately. Make it an air unit. I needed there half an hour ago. I'm on my way over there now. Francois out." He looked up at Edouard, who simply raised a single glossy black eyebrow. "Merde," he muttered, and the two pushed their way back out into the crowd.